Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and once again, it's time to talk all things cinema. Joining me, as always, is the other Real to Real Talker, Paul Britton. And joining us tonight, we're excited to once again welcome our friend Kristen Smith. Kristen, welcome to Real Talk. Glad you could join us.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely. Well, we have you here because of a very specific movie that we'll be talking about tonight as part of our main feature on this week's episode, and that we will talk about shortly. But Paul, we've got quite a few other things we're going to cover this week, as well as introduce a couple of new segments.
Yeah, I'm super excited for one of our new segments, which is Real to Real Book Club. I think that's going to be super fun.
Absolutely. In addition to that, we'll be introducing a new segment called Real Alphabetical, as well as our regular segments. So we're going to get right down to it. And Kristen, we are so happy you can join us because you brought to our attention a film that I'll be honest and say that I probably wouldn't have watched this movie right off the bat if you hadn't brought it to my attention. So I'm going to ask if you would just kind of introduce what we're about to talk about, because as we begin our slate of movie reviews, let's try that a few times this week, we're going to start with one that is very, very unique. So, Kristen, what movie are we going to talk about together?
We are going to talk about the Tollywood movie RRR.
Indeed. First of all, I have to ask you, Kristen, how did you come across this film? Talk a little bit about how you found it, and what was your initial interest in the film itself.
So I was kind of aware of it for a little bit because it was playing in Chicago for quite a while. So it was on my radar, but kind of like you, I was just like, I might eventually watch it if it looks like it's gonna be like an awards player or something. And then one of the podcasts I listened to, Unspooled, which is where they are trying to compile the best movies of period and send it into space.
Yeah.
After going through the AFI 100, they made a large, passionate plea for people to watch this movie because of how over the top, but also sincere it was. So I checked it out, and lo and behold, it is over the top and also very sincere. And that's why I am right now very obsessed with it.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you are. I'm glad that you brought it to us, because again, one of the first things I'd like to talk about as we begin our discussion on this very important film. And you mentioned the term Tollywood. It is make sure I get it right, Telugu. That's the language that it is written in or presented in. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Sort of the southern part of India.
Yeah, but the movie's on Netflix, and they only have the Hindi version.
Okay, gotcha. And so this film, I kind of want to set the tone for the conversation, at least for my part of it, in that, yes, this is a very, very unique film. And one of the first things that I realized, and I wasn't more than maybe 10 minutes into this film before I thought this, you have to approach this film through a particular lens, or else you may not give it the due that it deserves, because it is so over the top. And so right from the outset, and Paul, I'll ask of you the same question. What were your thoughts, guys, as you watched the film? Did you think to yourself, if I just go at this from a Western lens, I might not enjoy it as much as I end up enjoying it? There's a particular style here that is present and that is to be enjoyed.
Yeah, I will say that I did that as much as I possibly could. And much like Kristen, I had heard about this movie in early May, I think is when I first heard about it as being through another podcast as being something that I should see, and a couple of movie boards on Facebook, or movie pages on Facebook I'm on, people were talking it up, and I actually it was playing here in South Florida also, and I saw lots of people going into the theater, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's definitely been on my radar, and I think that there is a certain lens that you have to watch the movie through, and I think that there are things that you appreciate through that lens, and I think that there are things that just for me don't translate at all.
Okay.
Even with that lens, and I won't get into the specifics quite yet, but yeah. So, the over the topness and sincerity it's awesome. I love the sincerity. I love the over the topness. But yeah.
And Kristen, I'd love to get your thoughts on that as someone who, your experience in film and such. Am I right to think that there is, for the Western viewer, it's going to be that initial moment of like, okay, this is something that's very different from what I'm used to?
I will say I liked it least the first time I watched it.
Okay.
Because like you said, there's a lot to process.
Yes.
Like all the mix of genres, the fact that all the villains aren't complex. They are pure villains.
Yeah.
There is no subtlety to it.
And I'm okay with that, by the way. That's not a part that I don't have a problem with. Yeah.
And that there's also a lot of history that will probably go over our heads. And there was some confusion in the very beginning. But I know since I started showing this to people, because I love just being present while other people watch this, which is why it was such a big theater experience, like you said, Paul. Just because people are shocked, they are amped, they are confused, and that is just that's the kind of movie experience that I like being with people for.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even if I have to kind of explain things
how many times have you watched this at this point?
3 times.
Okay. That's 9 hours. By the way,
Yeah,
this is a ridiculously long 3-hour movie.
I'm there's a clear halfway point where you can stop. I tell people, you can stop halfway, and an hour and a half in, there's a clear fight scene where you can just stop and pick it up, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. And that was literally going to be my next comment. This is a movie that has a 3 hour and 7 minute runtime. Yeah. But I will tell you that here lately, if I see a movie has a runtime of 2 hours or more, there is that part of me that's just like, oh, gosh, okay. But so when I saw that, I was like, all right, okay, but I trust Kristen, and so I started the film, and when it was over, it didn't feel to me like I had been there that long, and I think it's because, and Paul, you'll resonate. This will resonate with you. So much of the action and so much of the over the topness is right in my wheelhouse of things I enjoy in films.
But it takes a long time to get from one set piece to the other. It takes a long time. I felt every minute. Honestly,
really?
I thought it was 5 hours by the end of it.
Wow.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. This movie needed an editor so bad. So bad.
I mean, I will say, when you get to that halfway point, there was a part of me that was just we must be close to the end based off of that fight scene. And then I paused it and I was like, we're not even halfway through this goddamn movie.
Yeah.
But it was also, that's to me, it was kind of, the way I would kind of describe it for me is it's kind of like an old epic. Like something like Lawrence of Arabia, where it's an event. It's like reading a novel where you have subplots, you have so many arcs and stuff that's going on that I appreciated it more the more I watched it, because I kind of understood more the structure and really appreciated how many callbacks, how many things are set up at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to just use your epic analogy and say this movie is like watching Gone with the Wind if everybody on screen is as dumb as Scarlett O'Hara.
Yes.
It's just
amazing.
And that's my problem with the movie. everybody in this movie is so insufferably dumb, and it drives me nuts. I can't get past it. And Sergio, you know this is a thing with me. I can't stand when people are dumb. This is part of the reason why I don't typically like horror movies, because if everybody's just being dumb the whole time and not taking 5 seconds to have a conversation, and we're gonna be given the Maverick and Goose montage in the first half hour of the movie, where they go and they have their ice cream sundaes together, and they save a kitten in a tree, and they meet each other's parents and everything. By the way, scene goes on for 10 minutes plus.
Great.
And
should be longer.
Should be 2 minutes max. And the Maverick Goose scene is over, and they literally know nothing about each other. They literally know. They at no point during this huge montage that sets up the friendship, and the song is completely over the top with foreshadowing. I mean, it's just the song should literally be called "We Are Foreshadowing" with this song. Like that should be the title of the song, and they know literally nothing about each other. Nothing. There is nothing they know about each other. It's ridiculous. It's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And then my biggest problem is that Raja is he has a secret, okay? And to open, I don't know if it's the end of the third act or the beginning, or end of the second act or beginning of the third act, wherever you want to put it, is the reveal of his secret. And his secret is so fucking dumb. It's so stupid. It's just like, what? You cannot possibly expect me to appreciate this character's motivation at all. Like, at all. Like, and so throughout the movie, he look, he's got his introductory scene, he's an asshole. Like, he's just a horrible person. Like, he's fighting on the side of the terrible colonizers. Okay, so he's a bad guy. But we're not supposed to look at him as a bad guy because he's clearly a hero. So it's like, okay, so let's get to the point where we understand how he's actually a hero and not just, a tool for the oppressor. And it takes 2 hours. The scene where we find out what he's doing, it takes another half hour to get through. And it's dumb. I mean, it's literally dumb. It's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. This is his secret. And this being a tool for the oppressor was his great idea. I can't forgive this movie its dumbness. I cannot, because of its sincerity. You can't be this sincere and this dumb.
And okay, so I want to build on that thought, Paul, because, and Kristen, this is where I'll seek your thoughts. Is this a sort of a hallmark of this type of filmmaking, the Tollywood, filmmaking? Because so much of the film work that I've seen that comes out of India, whether it be Bollywood, Tollywood, whatever the case might be, there is this sense of everything over the top, everything based on music and song, not based on, but inclusive of, and stories that are, I'm going to say the word simple. I get what you're saying, Paul, but I just wonder, is this a product of this style of film? The storytelling aspect?
The short answer is, I don't know.
Okay.
Because this is my first Indian movie that I ever saw, period.
Okay.
And I did afterward watch another one that was on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also over the top. The action was crazier. The people were dumber. But
oh my God.
But that's where I found the contrast of it, because there is definitely an emotional core to RRR.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do cry in this movie.
Oh,
like,
wow.
how much these two main characters really liked each other, and how much in their different conflicts, you can tell they both care about each other, while also they have their own missions that they're going on, and they don't quite realize that both of their needs are in conflict with each other.
But they're not. That's the biggest problem, is that they're not. And if they literally had a superficial conversation about the biggest geopolitical thing going on in their world today, like a superficial conversation, they would have realized, okay, well, they're probably on the same page. And that would lead to more conversations. And we know that they clearly know that they're each superheroes, and they could, maybe come up with a better plan than either one of them has, because, well, one of their plans is just fucking dumb.
Are you talking about the
Raju's
an escape that happens at the end?
No, well, that's a whole other thing. That's actually the best part of the movie. Raju's plan, like his motivation throughout the movie, his reason for being a tool for the colonizers, is unforgivable. Like I as a viewer of this movie, for as a like, no, you don't become a tool for the colonizers in a half-baked plan to solitarily do this thing that you think you're going to be able to do once they like you, because the colonizers are never going to like you. They're always just going to be using you. And the naivety that, oh, I'll be able to do this thing, this big mission that I'm on, if I just pretend like I am a good tool for the colonizers, it's like, come on. Like the lack of depth of character there is assaulting to me. Like, it's just assaulting.
But I also feel like, because from the very beginning, I mean, Raju has a fight of like 400 people. Like, the first scene we see him,
so over the top,
so great. To me,
that's
like,
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, but like, to me, the way immediately everything is over the top,
right,
is how I personally can forgive it.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not trying to be, a nuanced action movie. It's narratively very simple in terms of, like, this person wants to do this person wants to do that. This is their story. There's a love interest, kind of dumb. But like, yeah, but like,
although it does give us a footloose dance scene, which is fine, which is
that's
good.
my favorite part of the movie.
Okay, that's cool.
I love the dance scene, the dance battle.
I loved the human centipede fight scene. That was my favorite part. So,
well, and I think you're both.
I actually I had to rewind and watch that scene over again because I couldn't believe what I just watched.
Yeah, and the
human
dance
centipede
battle
fights.
I've watched at least 40 times.
God, I fast forwarded. I'm sorry.
It's on YouTube.
I'm sorry. I fast forward. I was like,
it's
okay,
5
I don't need
minutes,
to watch
and
this.
I wish it was 10.
I just wish it was 1.
but and again, this is where I think, and I will insist on this point, because again, this movie falls outside of everything I'm used to,
sure,
in terms of film. And so you took the words right out of my mouth, Kristen, in the sense of why I can forgive some of the outlandishness of the plot, some of the issues Paul brings up. If I'm then this is where I go back to my comment about Western lens. If I look at this from that perspective, I will find a large portion of this movie ridiculous. Right. So once for myself, once I get past that, it's one of those things where I enjoy it because it is purposefully doing what it's doing, because this is the style and direction of this film, right? And I'm able to kind of forgive because when we do get the reveal of Raju's motivations, I'm sitting there going, but no, you did so much bad in the meantime, right?
Right.
Which I think is that's your point, Paul.
That's my point, and
in that regard. So
yeah,
and so that being said, if we look at it from a story standpoint, that it has problems, right?
Major problems. It takes 2 hours to get to there. Like, that's the other thing. Like, just from a narrative standpoint, that we have to wait 2 hours to get there, and then the reveal, that scene's reveal, is like, I think it was like 15 to 20 minutes long. That scene, it's like, oh my god.
And again, not knowing what a typical film in any portion of India, length of running time, storytelling, whatever.
Sure.
There's a lot that I had to sort of be cautious of how I viewed it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, I do want us to talk about, group friends, these sequences. Number one, there's a big disclaimer at the beginning of the film that talks about how every single animal that appears in this movie is digitally generated.
Yeah.
And I remember when I saw that, I thought, oh, what is this going to be like? Or what? Wow is all I'm going to say. What a creative use of animal, not just as motif, but also as just a action sequence upon action sequence.
That was my least favorite scene.
These are some of the things that for me I think make this film fascinating. Are not, and I'm not talking about just the animals, but the action, the way in which this was filmed. Let's talk a little bit about the technical aspects of this film and what how we felt about that. Kristen, we'll start with you. Talk a little bit about that.
So it's very interesting because there's a lot of really good. There's a lot of like really beautiful shots in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the first things that I noticed was that it was filmed at a high shutter speed. Like normally things are kind of like a 50 shutter. So like when you watch a movie, it's smooth motion, but when you have to do slow motion, which this movie's 50% in slow motion, right?
Hence the runtime.
You have to crank up the shutter speed. Load, shoot. You have to crank up the shutter so that you can have like smooth motion when you slow the footage down. And it kind of felt like they did this for every single shot in the movie so that they could pick any shot to slow down.
Yeah.
And it also gave a consistency to the film. Like it didn't feel like, oh, now I'm in a set piece, now I'm in the whole film has this beautiful, vibrant, popping picture to it because of that.
Yeah. And I was when I first watched this movie, I thought the visual effects were very iffy.
Okay.
But there was a YouTube channel, like someone sent me a YouTube of visual effects artists, and they went through several scenes that I did not realize how complex and how interesting, because they were really impressed with it and pointed out that like even in the more questionable scenes, they are doing really interesting and smart moves to make up for the fact that they are like for animals, they are all computer generated because it would be impossible for them to do all these moves.
Right. Yeah. I didn't like the tiger scene. I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't like primarily just because even though I knew that the tiger was being computer generated, it's just kind of like, do we really need to have a guy beating up on a tiger? It just, I don't know. I don't think we needed it. The intro scene, I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No, give us your opinion.
Your
opinion's valid.
The intro scenes were like, you can, this is my problem. The problem with this movie being 3 hours is that I could do a rewrite and edit of this movie. That's an awesome 2 hour, 2:15 movie. Just awesome. Like, get rid of Raju's backstory completely, and change it so that it's just, he loses his father. That's all we need to do, and that's his reason for doing his thing. What's the other guy's name? Beam is the protector of a village, and that's why he's doing their thing. Put him on the streets of New Delhi, and have them, both be working towards a mission. Save a kid. That scene fucking rocks. The saving the kid where they swing around. It's absurd and awesome. You can still have your footloose dance party. You can still have your the human centipede scene at the end, and it's more impactful because you're not sitting there like, why is this beam guy giving a shit about Mr. puppet of the colonizer? Like, it's just you get rid of so much bad politics from the movie by cutting it to 2 hours and 15 minutes, and yeah, that's it.
Well, also in Asian cultures. Like, I'm thinking specifically kind of like, I've seen this in some like Chinese Hong Kong movies. I've seen this in, South Korean movies, like to be brothers is a big deal.
Mhm.
Sure.
Like like masculine vulnerability, like between two like male close friends, is a lot more accepted. And then that's why it's more heartbreaking once they realized that, at least as far as they could tell, they are against each other, or they feel like they have to turn against each other in order to get their goals.
Yeah.
So, and again, like for me, it's stupid. It's Fast and the Furious. Like logic to me,
Yeah, I don't like
I
those
can
movies
gloss
either.
over that logic because I am just enjoying the journey it gives me.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I and that's good. And I went into the movie wanting to be in that place.
Mhm.
It was just I couldn't get past just the really bad choices that everybody was making. I just couldn't get past it. And the fact that these two guys are supposed to be now best friends in the whole planet and save kittens from trees and eat banana split sundaes together and have dinner with their parents and never have a conversation
racing
about
with their
anything.
horses and
Yeah.
motorcycles.
Right. And never have a conversation at all about anything, apparently, because, the two most important things going on in their lives, just forget it. The dude is looking for a person and he's best friends with the guy with him every day, apparently, and never thinks, oh, let me show you this person. Like, and there's an actual scene where it's like, oh yeah, why didn't I show you? And then they're like, yeah, why the fuck didn't you? It's so stupid. But neither
Because
here nor there.
the picture blew out of his hand and fell in a puddle. We saw this.
So it's like,
This
oh,
it
you
was
got
explained.
Are we going to go through this whole conversation without bringing up the homoeroticism that is in it? Like, because
it's very gay and I love it. But also
Chris, good. So we all agree it's there. It's not there intentionally. And so does that do anything to you as far as making you be like, well, it's there, but nobody sees it until you get outside of a super heteronormative culture type of situation? Or like,
well, like, again, for me, it just goes back to like a lot of Asian movies I've seen where if you call yourself brothers, you are very close. And if these were two female characters who are best friends, like they can be affectionate. They can be, very affectionate towards each other. And they're just girls, like girl best friends. But that sort of like close friendship between like two, male identifying people in Asia is normal. Like it's more normalized than we are as a Western culture. And that kind of circles back to what you were talking about, Sergio, that like trying to view this from a Western lens, watching this is, you will probably have the thought like, wow, this is kind of gay. But I think for me, having known the background of how like male to male friendships work in Asian cultures, like that kind of thing can be more common than we would see in Western civilization.
Right. And that's exactly the point I would make, because again, this film you will, if anyone views it from a Western lens only, they're going to lose so much of what the culture in which it was born. In terms of the film itself, it's presented in however that audience will, whatever they'll be used to. And so some of what we look at and feel is sort of off center, it's not to the audience that would normally see this film first, right? And I also think we should say, for those watching, this movie is basically taking two very historically important people in the culture of the southern portion of India, and putting them into a story in which, number one, they never cross paths in their lives, right? So this is fictional to begin with,
right.
But it's a celebration of a very important part or parts of the history of this country. And again, if and I learned all this sort of during and after as I'm watching this film, and that's what helped me to also see past a lot of what I'm used to seeing in the films versus what I was getting in this movie, because it's like, okay, this is telling a story that it will be historically important. That's why, you know, the elimination of a lot of the politics in this is not possible, because the audience that this movie was originally intended for would know this history and would know these two men and the roles they played in the, you know, in the way in which the history of this country is played out. And so my point being that, you know, I think to appreciate this movie the best way possible, it's literally separating ourselves from what we're used to in a film and saying, okay, not what I'm used to, but was it compelling enough to hold me for the entire story? Flaws or not, absolutely, I'm in, and I'm really pleased to have seen this film.
Yeah, and to kind of give it another perspective, and this was a movie that was intentionally used as inspiration because it's historical fiction. This is kind of like their Inglourious Bastards, that it's a retelling of real history, but definitely embellishing it to tell an outlandish story.
So much we could probably take the whole entire episode and talk about this movie.
Pretty much.
But Kristen, you know, as our guest, number one, thank you again for being with us to discuss this film. Any final thoughts you would leave us with before we go to our taco rating for this film, RRR? I'd like to leave the last word with you.
I mean, I've watched the dancing scenes, like both the middle one as well as the end musical number, no less than 40 times, just because they just bring me so much joy. There's so much music in this movie. A guy gets tortured and sings a song in the middle of it. It is so crazy. But that's also, I like musicals. And for me, I'm just like, this is a lot of fun that you're incorporating this ballad in the middle of a guy being tortured like it's Braveheart.
In horrific ways. I mean, yeah. It definitely is a unique film in that regard. And this is why, I mean, I don't know how I feel about giving it a taco rating after all we've talked about, but that's what we do on the show.
Sure.
The film itself, I before we even go to this, I want to say to those watching, I hope you'll check this film out. You can catch it on Netflix. We always encourage folks who watch the show that based on, you know, don't base your decision to watch a film based on what we say or how we feel about it. I just really hope that folks will go out and find this movie on Netflix and really give it a try. But again, here on the show, we give movies our ratings based on our 5 taco rating system. A movie can get as many as 5 tacos plus guac if you want to give it some extra love. Kristen, I want to start with you, if you would, please. How would you rate the movie RRR in relation to our rating system here?
So far, this is my favorite movie of the year. So it is only the second 5 taco film for me this year, and it's 5 tacos plus guac for me.
Oh, all right. 5 tacos plus guac. Thank you, Kristen. We appreciate it. Paul, I'll come to you next for your rating for RRR.
I'm going 2 tacos plus guac. I'm giving it guac because of the over-the-top action scenes, which are phenomenal and absolutely need to be seen. Like, you definitely need to watch this movie just for the over-the-top action scenes. I really wish that that it was a little less superficial in a lot of spots. That's ultimately my problem with it.
Totally valid.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. For myself, I'm going to give it 4 tacos plus guac. The guac comes from the simple fact that it exposed me to a genre of film that I've not watched enough and made me curious to learn about the backstory and history of, you know, behind this story. Very few films motivate me to do that. And the 4 for me is everything from the musical sequences, the action, the way in which the digital work was done. And yes, simple story. Absolutely. There were some big gaping plot holes, but overall, I too came away with a feeling of joy having watched this film and really enjoyed it. And I really hope folks check it out. So that is our view of the film RRR. Kristen, I cannot thank you enough for joining us for this particular review. We always enjoy having you on the show, and we hope that you'll join us again soon.
Thank you so much for having me again. I can't wait to be back.
Yay!
Awesome. We're looking forward to that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. We'll be saying goodnight. And in a moment, we will continue with our show. We just want to remind everyone that you can find us on social media. Please make sure you check out our Facebook pages as well as Instagram. Just look up Real to Real Talk, and you'll find all of our social media. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget, click that subscribe button. Make sure that you click the notification bell so you know when episodes land week to week. Paul, we've still got quite a bit to talk about, so we want to go ahead and get right to it. Where would you like to head next, my friend?
Book club.
Oh, yeah. We're going to introduce the first ever Real to Real Talk book club, because we decided that since we knew a film that was coming up was based on a novel, which I'm sure we've discussed many films with that,
right?
That we would read the book and then watch the film.
Yes.
And I've got the book right here.
Excellent.
Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yes.
Delia Owens, the author of this, it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for
27 years.
Yeah, long
since it was released in 2018. Well, it was Reese Witherspoon. It was her first book club book.
Okay.
Like Reese Witherspoon has a book club apparently, and so like it instantly, just shot up the charts because of that, and it's become like one of the best-selling books of all time. Like it's crazy.
It spent something like 20 weeks on the top of the New York bestseller list and continues to reside on that list. I actually am happy to say that the book was a gift to myself from my sister.
Oh,
and so I was very pleased to get to read it and now talk about a film based on this novel. So, Paul, we're going to review the movie Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know your thoughts, because you did a very good audible version of a portion of the book before we...
I love you, Kyle. So thankfully... So I accidentally bought the audio version. I meant to read the book. I bought the audio version on accident. I wasn't about to pay twice for the book. So I went ahead and did the audio version.
Yeah.
And I love you, Kaya gets said quite a lot in the book. I don't think it's said. I was like purposefully listening for it just because I wanted to laugh during the movie. I don't think it gets said once, which is kind of merciful. I like super high level. This is a great adaptation of a very good book. I mean, if you want to talk like people, one of the things that you encounter when books are adapted is it inevitably becomes, well, was it better as good as this movie just took the book and was like, I'm going to make a really good movie out of this book, and boom, did it. It was like everything that what was the Dan Brown book and movie?
Oh gosh, there's been so many
with Tom Hanks. The first one.
He did all of them.
I know he
did.
The first one.
Angels and Demons was the second movie, but the first book, the second book, first movie was, and it's going to escape me. Anyway,
this is what that should have been, because that book was set up to be a movie, and they just completely botched it. Okay. Whereas this movie. This would have been this was really kind of a little tricky book to translate because it hops, like the book hops around in time frames, which is something that I really like in books. Like my favorite book of all time is Catch-22, and I really like when books force you to kind of pay attention to what's going on, pay attention to different timelines, and just wait as the timelines catch up and a complete picture is shown together. I really like that in books, and this book does that very well. And the movie does a really good job of stripping that down bare bones and putting it together in 2 hours. That's really,
Yeah, the book itself is the story of a young woman who we find out in the, again, it's a 2-part timeline that's happening in the book. We find out right from the outset that she's grown up in a marshland area, and why I can't remember the setting, but basically is abandoned by her family, literally one at a time, starting
Right.
from the outset of the book with her mother leaving,
Mhm.
and then her life progressing from there as she raises herself. Basically, she's known as the Marsh Girl in her community, because she is basically fending for herself, due to the family leaving completely because of her abusive father.
Right.
And then, of course, the story picks up from there. It is inclusive of quite a bit of a thriller in terms of a murder mystery.
Good court scene,
Yeah.
courtroom drama.
Yeah, and the movie does a great job of using, again, I know we're not going to break down all the differences between the books, but it does a good job of taking that courtroom drama and making that the framing piece of the film.
Exactly. Yes.
In order to capture the other pieces of the timeline. So there's a lot sacrificed, I think, in the timeline of her growing up.
Sure, for sure. But that's the stuff that you need to cut out. Like,
exactly, yeah.
And if you're a fan of the book and you get mad because they cut that out, you just need to calm down and be mad that they made it into a movie and not a 8-part miniseries.
And did it justice.
What's that?
And did it justice in the way that they...
Yeah, I mean, it really does do it justice. The stuff that they cut out, it's really good in the book, but to tell the story... It's not necessary. They did I felt like they did a really good job of making Kaya sympathetic very quickly. But here's the thing is you get a cute kid, it's really not difficult to turn somebody sympathetic. So
sure. I think one of the big successes of the film was the ability that it has, and I'm talking outside of the movie itself, is it should draw people to be curious about reading the book.
Sure.
I would hope, right?
Yes.
Because even though, it's a very solid adaptation, and I think if there was, I'm not even going to say I'm going to fault it for this. I just think that it was unique how they decided to resolve the end. Because the book there's sort of it's a deeper reveal.
That's difficult though. And I will say that's the one thing, if you want to do the bad, is it better than the book? I would say that's the one thing that the book has an advantage on, is it can go deeper into the denouement than what the movie can.
And spend more time on it,
right.
And you're not sitting there going, I really wish we could have just gotten to that, so, because having that perspective does change your feeling of, however you feel about the end, right, of the film. But I think overall, this movie is the kind of movie that, as someone who loves to kind of compare book adaptations, it did a decent job of adapting the book.
Yeah.
And telling a compelling story, and you're not going to sit there and go, what, that didn't even happen. None of that was occurring in the film itself.
Right. And I do want to shout out to it was a well-acted movie. I mean, obviously David Strathairn's in it, and he's always good, amazing and phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the actress who played Kaya was really good. Like, I really, really liked her, and I'm super excited to see her in other things. And her both of her love interest actors did a really solid job too. So kudos. Yeah, honestly, kudos to everybody in this movie. They did a really good job, I felt like. I don't know.
No, I agree. So well put together and well acted. And again, not typically the type of film that I would rush to go see.
Sure.
But if we're gonna use a film to start a book club, let's do it. So
sure, might as well be the #1 best seller for 17 years in a row. So yeah, it worked out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Paul, for Where the Crawdads Sing, let's talk a little bit about Taco ratings. How would you rate the movie Where the Crawdads Sing?
I'm torn on this one. I'm going to go with 3 plus guac, and I'm adding the guac just because, again, I felt like it was a really solid adaptation of the book. There's really nothing in the movie that it's like, oh my goodness, that works so well and it's fantastic, and this pushes it over the edge, other than the fact that it took a book and so adeptly conveyed what was in the book onto film, and bravo to them for that. So yeah, 3 plus guac.
All right. Well, for myself, I'm going to go with 3 solid tacos for Where the Crawdads Sing. Again, it's a good film. If you've read the book, I would highly suggest that you check it out, because you will, I believe, be satisfied with the adaptation. And so, that is our look at the movie Where the Crawdads Sing. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into what the hell did I just watch, Paul? I feel like, man, where do I put all this stuff? Let's just go the way we normally do.
Yeah.
And turn it over to you.
All right. So what the hell did I just watch? Reminder, I'm trying to keep on task. So I decided to go with a love story this week because that's where the Crawdads sing is. It's a love story. And I went with a Ryan Gosling driven love story called Lars and the Real Girl. It's the story of Ryan Gosling plays Lars, and he anthropomorphizes a real girl doll, like the life-size sex dolls that you can buy, and falls in love with her. And holy shit. Let me tell you, the first 10 minutes of this movie, the setup, before he actually buys the real girl, it's just like Ryan Gosling's just a fucking genius, just absolutely a fucking genius. And he does such a good job of making people uncomfortable for his characters. That's just the thing that he does that so well. And it's just like, holy, this is just somebody that has zero social skills whatsoever and just wants to be left the fuck alone. And God save him, because nobody will leave him the fuck alone. And then he buys the real girl.
Yeah.
And it's not like over time he falls in love and boom, I have a girlfriend. She don't talk about the fact that she has to use a wheelchair. She's very sensitive about it. I mean, the introduction of his real girl girlfriend, it's probably the most flabbergasting 15 minutes of movie. I just like that first 15 minutes where it's just like you're getting used to the fact that he does have, it's just like, holy shit, what the hell is where is this movie going? Yeah. And then the genius of the movie is it turns into a feel-good movie. Yeah. And it's serious. Have you seen this?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it flips from just this, like, what the fuck am I watching, to holy shit, everybody in this town is a fucking saint. And this movie is amazing. And
yeah. And I'm glad I waited, because boy, I almost didn't make it through that first 25 minutes or so. I was like, what am I watching? This was years ago. It
is shocking.
Yeah.
It is shocking.
Yeah.
Like I literally screamed at the TV about 2 minutes into him. I was like, you've got to be fucking. And then I instantly was, oh, this is definitely a what the hell that I just watched.
Yeah.
And then it turns into a genuinely heartfelt, deep, feel good movie where everybody rallies around Lars. And it's like, this is how you know it's a fantasy movie, because there's no town in America where everybody.
Exactly. And I was going to say, and none of that would be impactful at all if you didn't go through that first 20 to 25 minutes. The rest of the movie would have been run of the mill. We probably would never have even talked about it.
Right.
It just, everything in the first part is necessary, or else none of it works. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
For all the reasons why I didn't like Swiss Army Man, that's why I liked Lars and the Real Girl, because Swiss Army Man never figured out how to bring the main character into the fold, whereas Lars and the Real Girl does, and it's amazing, and I love it. You have to see this movie. I recommend it for everybody. Please. I think it's on HBO Max right now through the end of the month. So
awesome. All right. I definitely second that. Make sure you check out Lars and the Real Girl, and make sure you check out what Paul is watching week to week. Make sure you stop by and join us, because wow, you will always be surprised. So
yep.
All right, we're going to go on to our new segment called Real Alphabetical, where I challenge Paul to give me a movie every week that we're going to talk about, but it's got to be in alphabetical order, and we're starting with A tonight. Brief discussion. You started with me with Amelie, but unavailable.
You couldn't find it anywhere, which really upset me, because I was really stoked to talk about Amelie.
Not streaming in a single place, even YouTube. Yeah. So we decided, you know what, because this was like 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's talk Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
What was your question, Paul? I mean, I rewatched Aliens to prepare myself for tonight. Because I watched Alien about a week ago. It's literally
like, I just want everybody to understand, like, how we're framing this. Okay. The way we're framing this is a completely inadequate but entertaining discussion of Alien versus Aliens.
All right.
This is the most fascinating movie and sequel in my mind ever. Okay. I don't think that you can come up with a movie and sequel that is more fascinating, just because it's a continuation of an overarching story.
Yep.
That could not be more different. Like two movies that are so different, and that's a lot in part because of the fact that the first one is Ridley Scott, the second one is James Cameron, and these are two movie filmmakers that are never going to get confused with what they're doing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And what's your feeling? Like how would you hit these?
Yeah, no, and it's funny because you gave me like this will be the what was it inadequate conversation,
completely inadequate yet entertaining comparison,
and that was the most that was said, and yet I had the same thought process as you're having about how to contrast these films, because at the end of the day, having watched Aliens again last night, I walked away, and I've seen this movie countless times, both of them, because I'm a fan of the whole series, even the bad ones.
I'll even watch 3. Movie, I don't care.
This particular movie is such a departure in tone from the first one because, again, Cameron is all about big action set pieces. I mean, this right from the outset. There's about a 10-minute window from the beginning where it's like it has that tone of that slow burn horror movie, that the first one was.
Yeah. For like a minute.
But then it's like Cameron said, but I gotta be me. And then all of a sudden it just becomes this big action, set piece after set piece. I think it does justice to the intent of the original, monsters and all that. But it is apples to oranges in terms of story and presentation. And I can't say, here, real quick, Paul, I will say this because the first 3 I'm 100% okay with. Yeah. Okay. What you get further than that, we got problems, although I love the prequels, which is funny because that's only one movie.
The fucking prequels.
I love the prequels. Like people don't understand how much
Prometheus is, it's right up there with the first 2.
Yeah. And Covenant
right up there with
Covenant brings us back to where Ridley Scott started in terms of the tone of the film.
Yeah,
Alien stands out as my least favorite because it is so much more about the action than it is about the creatures and the horror
of all of them.
Of all of them, because believe it or not, because again, it's like I don't know that this franchise needed this much action and guns and explosions and stuff. It's like why? It is a good movie. It is a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It is a good movie, but I think it fails to capture what was originally intended in relation to how these stories were to be told. So, just my thought.
And it's interesting because 3 tries to do it, but there are lots of problems with 3. It's a watchable movie. Yes. There are a lot of problems, and ultimately, it does not live up to what Alien tries to do.
Do you know that there's an assembly? It's called the assembly cut of 3. That's like it's like 37 minutes additional footage.
Oh wow!
And okay. I just started it late last night. I only got about 10 minutes in. So, but yeah, I'm giving 3 the
we could have a whole conversation on 3 on the production problems that it had. The fact that they literally took 2 completely different and unrelated scripts and said, just put this together as one script. And
plus another film where nobody turns the lights on. So
whole other thing. And then Alien Resurrection gets away from the scariness again and tries to do what Aliens did. And just is, so Alien 3 tried to do what Alien did, just wasn't as good. Right. Alien Resurrection tries to do what Aliens did and just wasn't as good.
Yeah.
And then Prometheus just comes and is like, Ridley Scott's like, guys, this is what I was trying to do. This is what I was trying to. God damn, Prometheus is a scary fucking movie.
I love it. It's fantastic.
Alien is the scariest movie I've ever it is my favorite horror movie. I cannot contend with the scares of but Aliens is one of the best action movies ever.
Sure. No, I don't deny that. Alien is one of those movies where for what it was back then when it first came out and the impact it had, campy as it may look now, it still gives me jump scares.
Mm-hmm.
It still manages to get me there because of the use of lighting, the use of music, the use of silence in some cases.
God,
yeah, it's a great film.
Water dripping. It's
I hate to say I'm glad Amelie wasn't available. So
yeah, there you go. The fun thing about Alien and Aliens and doing a compare and contrast is you cannot compare and contrast them because they are incomparable. Like they're so different in everything.
They're two different films, yeah.
But I love them both, and they're both super fun to talk to. So that's why this was going to be completely inadequate, but completely entertaining. So
love it. Well,
I think we're at the end of the conversation because
we're off to a good start. So we'll figure out next week when we meet again what Paul's B movie was.
Yeah.
See what I did there? As we go on and do part 2 of this series.
Of those.
All right. We've got some time for a couple of real quick reviews as we move forward now.
Yeah.
And Paul, actually, gosh, how many do we have? I think we got 3. Can we start with the Deer King? Because that's the one I missed.
Okay, cool. So Deer King, a guy who used to be an artist for Studio Ghibli, specifically for Miyazaki's movies, went on his own and was like, you know what, I'm making my own movie, and it ended up being Deer King. It was super popular in Japan and is finally getting super limited releases here in the United States. I imagine it'll be in streamers in a couple of weeks as well. And look, this movie feels like a Studio Ghibli Miyazaki movie. And it's just it's impossible to watch this movie and not compare it to Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki movies, specifically Princess Mononoke. And it's just like Princess Mononoke is one of the greatest animated movies ever made, and if that's what you're trying to go for, you're going to come up short, and this comes up short. It's really good. I definitely hope that people that are fans of Japanese animation check out the Deer King. It's solid, but ultimately, I mean, you're going to be at the end, you're going to say, well, it's not Princess Mononoke, and I think everybody knows that it's not Princess Mononoke, but it's really good. Super quick story is that there are 2 kingdoms that are at odds against each other, and like one of the outer clans of one of the kingdoms is led by this guy who's considered the Deer King, and it's about how the 2 countries are trying to reunite, but this guy is basically sort of like a fly in their ointment, if you will, and how he kind of rallies to allow this clan to keep their independence, and that's really where it goes, and it's fantastic, but it's not Princess Mononoke. End of the day, we're gonna go. It's a solid 4 tacos.
Right.
But yeah, worth catching if that's your thing.
I will keep an eye out for it, as I unfortunately was not able to make it. But I tell you what, I was able to make, and there's a little movie called Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. Hey man, you turn me on to animated films. So,
I'm not responsible for this one.
Plus, any animated film that has animals at its core, especially cats and dogs, I'm there. And so, Paul, here's where I think you might be a little surprised. I don't know if you knew, but this was one of the executive producers of this movie was Mel Brooks. He is one of the voices. The cast is all-star cast. And much like Blazing Saddles and Mel Brooks, most of his filmography, this movie leans on the ridiculous. And so the story itself is really the story of, it's a kingdom of cats that are all, and it's an Asian setting. There are samurai, there are bandits, there are, and the story involves Hank, who is the chosen town samurai for the I don't even want to give you the name of the town because you got to watch the movie to see how silly it all was. The idea being that Hank, as the only dog in the film, is not going to be an adequate samurai protector for this town, which is to the benefit of Ricky Gervais's character, who he plays the leader of that portion of the world, and he's wanting to impress the Shogun, who's played by Mel Brooks brilliantly. It is very, very much like Mel Brooks' work. Very inappropriate humor. Very, you know, if you love Blazing Saddles, if you loved Mel Brooks' or love Mel Brooks' work, this movie will resonate with you because it doesn't take itself seriously. It just has fun. And everyone in the cast seems to be really, really enjoying the experience of portraying their particular roles. And it really comes out to how the movie is put together. And so I am going to definitely, I'm not going to give it, a whole lot of tacos, but it is 3 very strong tacos.
Cool.
And a high recommend for this kind of movie. Just check it out. Have some fun. Maybe wait till it comes out on streaming.
That's my intent.
Jen and I really enjoyed it. It was hilarious.
Is it literally like a Blazing Saddles? Because that's what I've heard. I've heard that it's just kind of like
the humor is. Humor is.
Okay.
It isn't like an adaptation of the story, but
okay.
It really is. And plus, of course, there is that element of fish out of water kind of thing, and the humor that comes with that. But yeah, it's not quite tongue in cheek, but enough that you sit there and you go, "My goodness, why am I laughing?" And then realize it's okay to be laughing. So, it was really, really a very pleasant surprise for me as I went in, just because Jen wanted to see it. So
sweet.
I really enjoyed it. So we'll finish out real quick reviews with a look at a movie called Persuasion.
Yeah.
Paul, get us started here because I've been doing a bit of talking. So
Jane Austen. It's a Jane Austen adaptation.
Yes, it is.
And that comes up a lot here. We already had one Jane Austen adaptation this summer with Fire Island, and we get a little more traditional adaptation this time with Persuasion. However, it takes the comical elements that are inherent in all Jane Austen movies and bubbles that to the surface, and it really is a romantic comedy, where a lot of Jane Austen movies are pretty much dramas with some comedic undertones, like a little bit of comedy. This adaptation of Persuasion just brings the comedy full front and center, and it's on Netflix, and in my mind it was delightful. Did you catch it?
I did, and I don't know that delightful was the word, but again, this is not generally my cup of tea.
Sure.
So it was a movie, and I really, some of the acting was very wooden.
Okay.
The gentleman who played the love interest, but I got. This was not the first time you've said, "Hey, you got to check this movie out. It's a Jane Austen adaptation," and so I always go in hopeful because Paul, this was one of the first misses for me. I wasn't really a fan of the film, but I can see where people would like it.
Yeah, look, this isn't going to be in my top 5 Jane Austen adaptations of all time, but I did enjoy it. It also had a bunny rabbit, and I love bunny rabbits. So.
That's true. That does get a taco.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is you're going to sit down and watch this, and it's going to be 2 hours, and you're not going to be mad that you spent your 2 hours watching this, but you're also probably not going to be like, oh, I need to go watch that again sometime.
Right. Yes, I think that's a fair view of how I saw it. So yeah, no, absolutely. So how would you rate Persuasion? Available on Netflix.
Tacos on that one, it's but super standard tacos, nothing special.
Yeah, well, keep those 3 tacos up because that's what I decided after I watched it. I was like, that's where I'll land there.
Yeah.
And again, available on Netflix, so encourage folks to check it out. And so wow, what an episode, Paul.
That was and we did it almost in under an hour. That's what we shoot for, and we almost got it.
Yep, absolutely.
I think we did a good job.
I agree, especially since we spent such a great amount of time on RRR. So I want to say one more time, thank you to our friend Kristen Smith for joining us. We always love having her on.
And I want to give a heartfelt apology that I didn't like it as much as she did, and you did clearly.
Oh.
I really wanted to love this movie, and I just didn't, and it's on me. It's a character flaw with me, people. Definitely watch RRR for the human centipede scene at the end.
All right. Well, with that, we'll also encourage you to make sure you stop by again, our social media, YouTube, all that fun stuff. We thank you for being with us tonight. For those of you who joined us live, we are live week to week, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, every Tuesday night, unless we say different. But yeah, and for those of you watching after it drops, we thank you so much for joining us. And just remember what we always say and what is most important. You are awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you next time on Real to Real Talk.